get into the football side of things, and I'll kind of make my end of this a little short. Dwayne Haskins, obviously last year, some Washington football team fans weren't all that sold on him. Some had high expectations for him. Personally, I'm not a Washington football team fan, but I had high hopes for the guy. I felt that coming out of Ohio State, he was going to be really, really good. I actually compared him to Ben Roethlisberger coming out, which I think was a decent comparison, even though I don't usually do NFL comparisons, but I felt that he was the guy. I felt that under Ron Rivera with more stability, a better roster, hopefully he'd be able to show that he could, be the guy. But unfortunately, he wasn't the guy. A lot of people have heard my side of things. I still believe in him. I think that he could turn his career around in Pittsburgh, but I'm not going to talk about this too much. I want to hear your side of things, Louie T. Why do you think Dwayne Haskins failed? A guy that was a first-round pick, 15th overall to Washington, why do you think he failed as a member of the Washington football team?
With Dwayne Haskins, it's an intriguing situation, and his story is not done yet. Obviously, he's gotten another shot with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we'll see if he can kind of rewrite his story a bit. But when you look at Dwayne Haskins coming in, all the warning signs were there in 2019 with him. But you wanted to be excited. You wanted to be hopeful because if you're a Washington football team fan, you haven't had a franchise quarterback. Really, I think Kirk Cousins was one, but it was brief, and you knew he wasn't going to stay long because of the contract situation. Never had one in essentially 3 decades. So you really wanted to believe that this guy was the end-all, be-all. He was going to put all of that to rest and give us a guy we could count on year in, year out. Unfortunately, he teased us at the back end of 2019. The last 3 or 4 starts were really solid, and it gave us hope for 2020. And as you mentioned, with Ron Rivera coming in a new staff and all of that stuff sounded good, but it was more change for a young man that already didn't have a stable situation to begin with and didn't have a bunch of guys in the building that believed in him to begin with. So you're bringing in a whole new cast of characters. You're bringing in a new offensive coordinator that's got new verbiage and a new scheme. And all these things are tough for a young quarterback to digest. And what we really found out is that Haskins wasn't willing to put in the work. He wasn't willing to do the things necessary to become a franchise guy. Not saying that Washington is absolved of wrongdoing, because I don't think they handled the situation the best that they could have either. But at the end of the day, he didn't do what he needed to do. He didn't put in the work. He wasn't the leader that they wanted him to be. And it showed on the football field. Unfortunately for him, the last straw was him going out and celebrating his girlfriend's birthday in the heat of COVID, with no mask on. Again, they were out to eat, but still, it was. It's
an exception of a year where COVID, you got to be aware.
That, and then the stripper party, with no mask on, that just was very negligent on his part. And then to top it off, he comes back. They're desperate. We're down to our 3rd string quarterback with all the injuries. He's got to play, and he has just a miserable performance against the Panthers, and that was the last straw. They cut him. And I think all Washington fans at that point were ready to see him go. And he landed on his feet in Pittsburgh in a great spot with a really outstanding coach in Mike Tomlin, who I think is going to help him learn what it's like to be a professional, but also Ben Roethlisberger, and they've said nothing but good things about him in Pittsburgh. I wish him nothing but the best. Hopefully he is successful, but it just wasn't going to work in Washington for a myriad of reasons, but it wasn't going to work in Washington.
I feel like the Dwayne Haskins situation in Washington is an example of why there are only 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, you got to think about that for a second. It's just one of those things where everything matters. I think that Washington, if you're going to blame someone, you can blame Dwayne Haskins, but I think you also need to blame Daniel Snyder because, look, I like the pick, but the people in the building that were the coaches and the evaluators, they said he's not the guy. He doesn't fit what we want to do. And Daniel Snyder, he put his hand in the cookie jar, drafted this guy because he felt that he was worth the hype. He went to high school with someone that he knew, I think, something like that. And it just didn't work out. And I kind of feel bad for Haskins because I think that he should have went to a better situation where coaches believed in him, where he was maybe going to sit for a year, kind of like Patrick Mahomes sat for a year behind Alex Smith, because I know Patrick Mahomes is great. He's more talented than Haskins, no doubt about it. But there were some question marks about Patrick Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech, where he couldn't, maybe some people thought that he couldn't read a defense, maybe some accuracy issues. I think that he really benefited from sitting behind someone. I felt that Haskins should have been in that situation. But at the same time, I don't think he helped himself, because when he got benched, I was actually against the move. But as the year went on, I realized, yeah, Ron Rivera made the right move because, well, he's basically saying, okay, this team is ready to win. This guy isn't ready to lead us, and, I got to make a move. And I think that if Haskins had a better attitude, because the reality was Daniel Jones struggled last year to start the year. Sam Darnold wasn't very good. They were playing just as bad. You could maybe say they were better, but it wasn't like they were lighting the world on fire. They were young quarterbacks learning as well. But I think their attitude is why they kept getting more chances, because when you see Daniel Jones, he's at least trying. Sam Darnold, he's at least trying. Haskins, he just wasn't quite mature enough. And I still believe in him. I think that he got a wake-up call by getting released. And I think that in Pittsburgh, a much more stable situation for him where he's going to have good wide receivers, good players around him, a pretty good roster, and a coaching staff that I think is ready to really develop him. Do you think he can turn his career around in Pittsburgh? What does your gut tell you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what I was alluding to, saying that people didn't believe in him in the building. Daniel Snyder essentially went rogue and selected him in the first round of the 2019 NFL draft when no one else in the building wanted Dwayne Haskins at 15. So, and that person that went to school with him was his son that you were alluding to. And I don't even know if they're the same age. They might have, his son might have been a senior and Dwayne Haskins might have been a sophomore or freshman. I mean, it was really stupid what was done there. But that's what Daniel Snyder has been as an owner. He's been foolish and he's done things that he shouldn't have done. And that was one of those situations that he really hampered this franchise and set them back by selecting a quarterback in the first round that nobody else really believed in. That said, Dwayne Haskins wasn't mature. He didn't do the things he needed to do in Washington. He didn't put his best foot forward. He didn't dive into the playbook. Like some of those guys that you mentioned that have struggled, they struggled for a number of different reasons. Some of it their own, but a lot of it is just the dysfunction around them. Same can be said for Dwayne Haskins. He struggled because of a lot of dysfunction around him, but also he struggled because he wasn't willing to put in the work. And those other guys, say what you want about their struggles on the field and all of the dysfunction that may be happening around them organizationally, those guys still put in the work. The players around them can see that these guys want it and that they're trying their very best to give everything they've got. That was never the case with Dwayne Haskins in Washington. So Ron Rivera was kind of put into a tough spot because I think when he took the job, he took it on good faith of giving Dwayne a shot. I think he told Daniel Snyder, I'm going to give this guy an opportunity. We'll see what happens. He gave him the first 4 games. And I think Ron knew right away, this kid isn't ready. But I told Daniel Snyder I was going to give him a shot. So I'm going to give him a shot. And it just so happened it was probably the toughest stretch of games on the schedule. That didn't help. But he didn't play well, period, end of discussion. As far as him in Pittsburgh is concerned, I do think that him having a chance to sit behind a future Hall of Famer in Ben Roethlisberger, I do think him being in a more stable organization with better players around him for sure can be a help. But he's still got to do the work. He's still got to get in the playbook. He's still got to show initiative that he wants to, be the guy when Ben Roethlisberger finally hangs it up. He's got to come in early. He's got to stay late. He's got to put in extra reps. I don't care about your IG posts of you showing yourself working out in the offseason. I want to see what you do when nobody's looking. And that was the problem in Washington. There wasn't enough of him paying attention to the details, enough of him staying later than everybody else, coming in earlier than everybody else. He just wanted to do just enough to get by like he was still at Ohio State. And if he has that same attitude in Pittsburgh, he'll fail. But I think, as you mentioned, the wake-up call came when he was released. And this man didn't even make it out of his second year of his rookie contract and he was released. So that tells you just how fed up they were with him in Washington. And I think he realizes that this might be his last opportunity in the league. He's got a ton of talent, but there's only so many chances you're going to get. If you can't make it with the Pittsburgh Steelers, then you're probably going to be out of the league. So I think you may see a more focused and determined Dwayne Haskins than you did in Washington. And it's a shame because, you would love to have seen that work out in Washington, but I think he wasn't mature enough. Now, I think that process of him being mature might have been expedited because of the release. And he realizes, if I want all of the other things that I'm doing off the field to matter, I need to still be an active member of the NFL on a roster and producing. And this may be his final opportunity to do that.
And I was actually a big Dwayne Haskins fan, like I said, but I was actually one of the few people that said he might need to stay for another year at Ohio State. I think that because he had such a great season, his 1 year at Ohio State, success came kind of easy for him. Like, we thought, oh, this guy, he only 1 year starting. I mean, you know, you like to see more reps, but this guy has a ton of potential. He does this in 1 year. I think that because he only had the 1 year, he realized, oh, this might be a little easier than I thought, when in reality, he probably should have went back for another year. And I understand because Justin Herbert decided to, you know, go back to school for another year. There was a spot open for someone to take him. You know, maybe he thought the Giants were going to take him, something like that. But it's just one of those things where he didn't even see how college defenses would adjust to him in his second year. Then he goes to the NFL with a bad roster, a coaching staff that doesn't believe in him, and it's just a mess. And I will say, it all comes down to performance. And if that was Chase Young that was at the strip club with a bunch of people and he was playing well, in reality, Ron Rivera probably finds him, but he's going to still be on the roster because Chase Young is a darn good football player. Dwayne Haskins, he wasn't that good on the field when his time called. He had so many opportunities, but it just didn't work. But I do think he can turn his career around in Pittsburgh. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, so we'll see how it works out for him going forward.
And I want to add this.
Yeah,
too.
go ahead.
I wasn't a massive fan of him at Ohio State. He had
you liked it Drew Lock a lot.
I was a Drew Lock guy, absolutely correct. And so I was not a big fan of Haskins. Thought he needed to go back to school again. He did have a fantastic year, 50 touchdowns, I think 7 or 8 interceptions. He was magnificent in that lone season as a starter at Ohio State, but he needed more time. He wasn't mature mentally, as we found out. But I think also there were, physically some limitations to his game that he could have maybe ironed out with another year of work. And as you mentioned, seeing defenses for another year and the adjustments that they were going to make might have been beneficial to him as well. But he decided to come out. It wasn't for the best, obviously, and we'll see what happens with him now. But I was not a massive fan of his coming out of Ohio State.
Got it. We'll see if Drew Lock and Dwayne Haskins can turn their, careers around because Drew Lock, the clock's on him too. He hasn't played all that well in Denver. And I will say there's a reason why you go to medical school for an extra 4 years because, experience is everything, and I think that lack of experience definitely hurt Haskins, but I do think he definitely can turn his career around in Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.